I've been a pro luthier for almost 40 years, and I've seen things come and I've seen things go. And one of the things that kind of stuck around that I've acquiesced to see and accept, but I don't love it, is the 12-hole bridge. And there's so many ways of tying it, and almost all of them end in failure. The rationale behind the 12-hole bridge is so that way you have more down pressure on the bridge and increase your sound. But mathematics kind of doesn't lie. Today, I want to run through the math with you. I know, fun, woo! But also, I want to show you a couple ways of tying it as to not have any damage occur. Let's get right to it. Whenever I come across something that I'm not an expert in the field of, other than grammar, I like to turn to somebody who knows far more than I do and is far smarter than I. So I have a client and friend whose name is Richard Jernigan. He's retired, and what he could tell us of his career is that he worked at a listening station during the Cold War and other various wars, where his job was to listen for and detect incoming missiles and then figure out the orbital mechanics to send up a missile to meet with the other missile at a rapid pace. He did the calculations on this. I did not, but I will trust his math because he is truly one of the most brilliant people I've met. And that is actually saying quite a lot. So, why a 12-hole bridge doesn't matter for your sound is that essentially what the saddle does is it creates a stopping point for the vibrations at the bridge. As you pluck the string, the vibrations travel from your finger in both directions. One towards the fretted note, one towards the saddle. He really went out on a limb here to find a crazy string. He's using a D'Addario J45 third string, just the regular old nylon. All of this is based off of the tension being released at 1/5 of the way up, which is essentially where the average guitar player plays. That string is 0.04 inches, and it has a modulus of elasticity at 400,000 pounds per square inch. Okay? Follow me? Trust me, it gets better. The additional length of the string is about 8 millimeters, which is the maximum amount that you can kind of push it before it starts to really, really buzz. The additional strength over the entire length of the string is 0.31 millimeters. That's the total increase of length. That gives you a strain of 0.31 over 650, because this is all off of a 650 millimeter scale. If you multiply 0.00047, which is 0.31 divided by 650, if you multiply that 0.00047 times 400,000 gives you 189 psi, which means that the additional tension, or the stress across the cross-section of the string, is 0.24 pounds, which is a minute amount of the total elastic string tension of 12 pounds. If you actually kind of push the string down to the fingerboard, you're working at 0.92 pounds, so just less than a pound. That's the amount of force that your fingies have to push that string to the fingerboard. It doesn't matter if what it is, that is the math. If your guitar feels dead and it feels like you're squeezing more, that's on your guitar, but this is string, this is physics, and this is why I defer to him. So using those numbers and the additional 0.24, the additional push that is being put onto the saddle, the coefficient of friction of nylon is 0.18, which is pretty slippery. And that's the lowest coefficient. Most of them are pretty close. So when you take this all into account, basically, I'm going to put this up onto my website, and there will be a link in the description for all of this, because this is outside of my realm. I know what works. I don't know why it works. This is why it works. The maximum value for the coefficient of friction and is a break angle of 173.7 degrees stretched across, otherwise known as 6.3 degrees. Anything beyond that does not matter. I've never seen a guitar with 6.3 degrees of deflection. It's almost always more, even if it's a really, really low saddle and a very low tie block. Okay, so in order to make a mountain out of a molehill, people have added in that 12-hole system, and the person who takes a lot of the initial credit for that is my friend Jeffrey Elliott. He has been using them and doing this since the 70s, and he is definitely one of the earliest examples I've found of people doing this. He said that it increases the sustain and tone. If you close your eyes and you string up the guitar with the 12-hole with a 6-hole, I think that I would be hard-pressed to hear a difference. Chances are, when you hear a difference, it's because you put on new strings. With that said, we went over the math of why this is unneeded. Now let's actually get into how to do this. And last time I did a video on how to tie a 12-hole bridge, I realized that my hands blocked most of it. And working with clear nylon is really hard to see. In this instance, since I'm getting ready to go camping here, I grabbed some paracord, because everybody needs paracord, and I made a couple 12-hole bridge models. On this side, which is my left, your whatever this is the way that most 12-hole bridges are held, meaning that they are 2 holes in a line. And I don't like this because there's very little space between the 2 holes, and because we are luthiers, we like everything to be perfectly precise, and we're gonna drill 12 holes in a perfect line, because that's the way that we are. That now creates a stress point because you have weakened and taken out that much wood in between. The enlightened builders will do something like this in my middle, which is coincidentally also your middle, where they will stagger 1 hole high and 1 hole low with a separation. And now for this example, I have exaggerated this. This is something that is way farther apart than it should be, but in reality, they should be just missing, but because I did that this way, I did it this way. This one is a standard 6-hole bridge, and I'll show you how to tie that too, but I've done other videos on that as well. Let's get into tying this so that way your string doesn't slip out. And by the way, if you're using a carbon-based string, those are extra slippery, so you have to be very careful. And whenever I do one of these styles of stringing, I leave a lot of a tail hanging out, and then I come back and I'll clip them after the guitar is settled, because I want to make sure that nothing is going. But that said, after I've tied this on, I've never had one slip, and it's taken a while. The traditional way to do this is to figure out which hole that you're using in order to go through. And if you come out this hole and it's supposed to be this one, your string is going to be too close to the edge of the fingerboard and it's going to fall off. Likewise, if it's in this hole and it's supposed to be in this one, it's going to be a weird spacing. So I always recommend taking a photo of your bridge, the way that you get it, to make sure that you remember how it goes together, because it can be confusing. I know I've made that mistake, and I know plenty of people, and I've seen plenty of guitars come in with that mistake. So without further ado, let's actually get to tying this on. So I'm going to pretend that this is the right hole. The standard method is to go through and up and around, back through, and for a bass string, tucking it this way is perfectly acceptable. Just something like that, because those windings are really strong. But for a nylon string, it's not so great because that nylon is slippery and this can slip out, over time. And this is not as slippery, but there we go, it can pop out. To combat the string from slipping out like that, and mind you, this actually has a burnt end because I don't want this to fray before I go camping, it's extra slippery. So I'm going to show you the way that I like to tie these strings, or at least I used to, until I figured out an even better way. I would go through this one, come up and through, and take and make a loop. And remember, we want a lot of tail. And then we would take our loop and come back up through here. And then I would actually come back through to have this loop come out over here. So that way, as the string pulls in against this tightly, and I pull on this, it all locks into itself, and you can pull on this end and tighten, which is why we leave a lot of tail out here. And this way is really good for preventing string slippage. But it actually got me thinking that really what we're doing is trying to pull the string into the guitar. And I see people where they put knots and knots and knots and then burn it. And then when it comes time to take them off, you can't, because there's knots and knots and knots, and you have to cut the string, and not everybody travels around with a pair of string clippers. And it takes a long time, and then you've got this knot here that is really cinched in tight that is hard to get undone. So the new way that I like to do this is a little bit different and doesn't seem as conventional, but I find that it's more secure, there's less slippage, and it actually holds intonation a lot better. We'll start with the string in the same hole. We go through here, back through the hole, creating a large loop, at which point you come through this loop, wrap around, and come down here. So as this pulls in, you have your outer string pulling down against these two, pinching it in place. And before you fully tighten it, give this a little tug. So that way when you pull, you've got the brunt of the knot being pulled right here. And this, at that point, because you have two layers lapping over itself, is not going to slip. This will keep everything really strong and really tight. So if your strings want to slip, maybe try doing this. Knot that actually comes apart very easily. So that way, when you're having to change your strings, you don't have to fight with it. The same holds true for this middle one, which is the proper way, and we're not going to use it because it's the same thing. But this one will tell you that the lower one, the lower hole, is the one that you use for stringing your guitar. Now that said, if you have this, you can also use this if you're stringing a regular old nylon guitar. You could just string it like a regular guitar and ignore that second hole. So you aren't committed to using the 12 hole if you don't want to. And this is perfectly acceptable. I've done it many times because sometimes builders will like to put a little pocket on the back where the string doesn't like to grab. So for security of that guitar, I'm going to do that. I'll show you truly why I don't like this. Okay, you get this fracture line, and I see this maybe about a half a dozen times a year, where you have all those holes lined up. And this is a little bit exaggerated, but if you drop something on it or bump it against something and you've got all that stress on there and it's a delicate little bridge, of course it doesn't go on that side. My piece is too big, but you can crack straight through the holes. As you can see, these aren't going to go, but these will crack. And if this cracks off, this is the end of your bridge. You cannot glue back to this. Don't take a chisel and a hammer to your guitar, but more importantly, tie your strings well, and they're going to hold irrespective of what kind of bridge you have, be it a 12 hole, that's improperly done, a 12 hole that is properly done, or a 6 hole, and you won't get that dreaded string slam. Thanks for watching. If you like this, please like, subscribe, and check out some of the other videos. And until next time, I'll see you.